All right, Ajay, thanks so much for that. It's a big story that we are talking about India Bulls Group, how things are changing. Remember, since 2018, since the fallout of Yes Bank and probably the dry up of the NBFC markets for bond markets for NBFCs, it is something which is struggling to raise funds. But now you're seeing that more announcement on this fundraise could probably come in, and this time around it could be a PE player which could also take a board seat. Let's go across to Saugata Bhattacharya. He's now with us, Chief Economist at Axis Bank. Saugata, generally we've always spoken about what the NPAs of banks are reflecting as far as the aggregate NPAs are reflecting in terms of state of the economy. In the last 20 days, every bank has announced, whether it's large, small, big or NBFC, fundraising. What does this tell you? What is this sort of fundraising that you're looking at? Do you see that banks are getting very, very cautious when it comes to their credit cost aggregate as in aggregate as a whole?
So I think, of course, this would depend from banks to banks, but on a general basis, so the first thing that has happened is, as you're mentioning, balance sheets and particularly capital positions will need to be strengthened. So this is one reflection, and this is an opportune time of raising money. As you've just mentioned, most companies, including banks and NBFCs, others, are looking for cheap funding sources, given the cheapness of funding to shore up capital positions. That's one. Secondly, particularly for banks now, in light of their preeminent position in the stimulus program that is envisaged by the government, and their large share of lending, because many of the banking sector competitors, because of different specific weaknesses, etc. So the role of lending has been largely ceded to banks. So banks need to raise growth capital, in addition to all to strengthening the balance sheet, etc. So I think in light of this, and given the lessons that we have learned, the need to raise to strengthen capital in the light of different risks that might emerge in the system at some point in time. I think cumulatively, this is the funding increases that you are seeing is the result of some of these factors.
Let's just talk about the interest of FIs as well. So we've seen a big deal on Reliance Jio, which has got a lot of dollars. A lot of other fundraising has happened, which has gotten a lot of FII participation, FDI participation in the markets. Do you think that is one of the key reasons where rupee is? And also, what do you make of the current account surplus which came in, and what does that impact for the rupee?
Yes. So again, so the impact on the rupee, the sudden strengthening that you've seen over the last couple of days on the rupee, I think the rupee, you need to break it up into two sources. One, typically are the flows, which is the direct impact on the rupee. Whenever there's an inflow or an outflow of the rupee, that has an immediate impact. And the secondly is the movement of global currencies, because even that has an impact. Indirectly also via risk on and leading to capital flows, etc. So the inflows of capital account that we have seen throughout Q1 and beginning in Q4 of last year. So obviously, given global perceptions of valuations of Indian companies, given the flood of liquidity driven by central banks in global markets, all investors are looking for yield. And India, after all, whatever said and done, is a very attractive market, particularly given the current valuation. So that's one. Secondly, in terms of flows, the current account surplus that you mentioned in Q4, and we think that even in Q1, we are likely to pretty much get a surplus. This is not very good news because, the surplus is being driven by lower imports, which is indicating weak demand. But be that as it may, it is contributing to the overall flows. And in addition to the current account potential current account surplus, you're also seeing the flood of capital flows. The third factor in where the rupee is headed is the strategy of the central bank, Reserve Bank of India. In dealing with. So obviously, there is a certain discomfort in allowing the rupee to accelerate, to appreciate beyond a certain point, to go below 75, then 74.50, and then whatever. It's a difficult number to read. So these are the three components. So the dollar in the meantime has weakened. There is a sentiment of risk on in global markets. which you have seen over the last couple of days in terms of the DXY index for the dollar. That has had an impact on all emerging markets currencies, in addition to which our estimate of increasing capital flows has also been instrumental in driving the rupee. Incidentally, I think the Reserve Bank has also started intervening in the forwards markets, which we hadn't seen for some time.
Right. Well, yes, that they have, because I mean, last week, or rather just, a couple of weeks ago, we had the rupee, which was one of the worst performers among, the Asian currencies. And now the rupee is just at about its multi-month high or 3-month high. And yeah, on that surplus bit as well, the reason why the surplus is weak is, there is a surplus, pardon me, is clearly because demand is weak and hence imports as well are low. But thanks a lot, Saugata. We are a bit short on time, so we'll have to thank you right there. Let's do one thing. Let's take a very short break, but when we return, Utkarsh Chaturvedi will be joining us with the latest report on the slew of launches in the auto space and also some news on Skoda. Stay tuned.